Hey, Chelsea.
Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to get Chelsea Crockford today. She is a RT, a recreation therapist. She worked in long-term care facilities and now works at a neurological facility with patients who have, cord injuries, brain injuries, strokes, and other neurological disorders. Chelsea has a page on Instagram called Connect Through Leisure, where she advocates for the field, connects with other recreation therapists, talks about the importance of leisure for clients and for ourselves. And she's now the new marketing director of CTRA, Canadian Therapeutic Recreation Association.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you
Me
here.
too. Thanks
we
for
have
having me.
Yeah, we've been connected through Instagram, and as I told you, I feel like we are friends since we're born.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I agree.
and your motivation and passion about the profession is very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, let's start talking about your education and your first job. What do you think?
Oh, yes. Well, so I'm originally from Quebec in Canada. So I completed my my degree at Concordia University. I I had no idea I wanted to get into, therapeutic recreation until I attended the open house at the school. So yeah, I kind of knew I didn't really want to go in like this like straight science and math, but I definitely wanted to work with people and help them in a certain way that I knew was in the clinical field. And so so I ended up just falling into rec therapy, and just when I met my then professor, he just explained it in such a beautiful way that I ended up just learning to be passionate about science and how that it was just so evidence-based, that practice. And my first job in the field, it was interesting. So I was in high school, and I always wanted, like I said, I always wanted to like help people, and I seem to always get along with seniors. I always felt comfortable around them, and I just kind of asked myself the question, like, well, do I see myself doing this as a job? So there was a long-term care facility next to my high school, and so I decided, I literally just walked in. I was like, I got my resume ready and, just asking for a summer job. And so luckily I ran into in Quebec, they have different titles. So she was an activity coordinator. And so I gave her my resume, and she was actually looking for summer students. And so I was an animator pretty much, and providing what was the services and activities that were provided or scheduled throughout the month. And I just fell in love with providing meaningful leisure to people. And just, as we know, seniors, unfortunately, oftentimes, as a lot of other people, but specifically seniors, I think it's common knowledge that they tend to be isolated. So I just grasped on to just providing those meaningful engagements and them lighting up that they just actually have somebody that genuinely is interested in their happiness, right? And then catering to their needs that way. So that's what really, I was happy that, you know, my gut was telling me the right thing, because I loved it. And I spent the 4 following summers working there and just volunteering extra time, because you get to know people on a really deep level too. So you just genuinely want their happiness, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
So it's kind of a nice, when I think back, I'm like, it's kind of a nice story to be able to kind of build off of. Yeah.
And you worked in the field, so even before you studied, even before you
Totally.
graduated, yeah.
I had no idea it was even a field when I started, right? Like, because like I said, Quebec has different fields of study, but it was more related to, again, just providing activities, and not necessarily what I feel like what wasn't grasping me the right, well, what wasn't paying, how can I phrase this? What didn't really make me so intrigued in it is because it wasn't as evidence-based as I would have liked it to, right? Because I think that's why I'm so passionate about the field, because we are as equals as other clinicians in our team. And I think that's where people need to know how valuable it is. It's not just the activities. Yes, providing the activities and services is as important for people that need it. I just know, me as an individual, I kind of like to go further in terms of knowing, okay, but why? What's the evidence behind this?
Right.
Yeah.
And after you graduated, you continued to work in long-term care facilities, or?
Actually, throughout my degree, I worked in long-term care, specifically at a veterans hospital. And it was actually right when I graduated. So the year before I graduated, I attended the CTRA conference that was held in Halifax. And luckily I was doing my internship there. So I was like, oh, it's so nice how things align. So I was able to attend, and, you know, lucky enough, you know, my placement, they agreed for me to attend and take that time. So I'm really grateful for that, because then I met my now coworker. So she was actually there to recruit, or, you know, to look for people that would potentially fit the position that that the rec therapist that I replaced, she was retiring. And so I let her know. I said, well, I have a year left, so if anything comes up. She hadn't even brought that up to me, and we just kind of exchanged contacts. And then when I went for my certification, so I graduated, I finished my courses at the end of the year. I got my certification in March, and she sent me the link for a job application. You know, I didn't see a reason why. I was kind of like, you know, I always say, give things a try. You know, I said, luckily I have good support at home. So worst case scenario, you know, if I get the job, I go and I hate it. I was like, luckily I can always come back home. So, so I applied for the job, even though I was so, you know, those butterflies of being like, oh my God, I'm a new grad. Like, this is I'd have to replace somebody that's been there for 30 years. I was a little nervous, you know. But again, that's why I like to talk to students, because I'm like, don't ever underestimate your skills, because then the more I was preparing for the interview, the more I was like, yeah, I have the knowledge, I have the experience. Like, it's being nervous is totally normal, but I kind of had to self-check myself, where I was like, yes, I can do this. And it kind of confirmed that when I got the job. So I worked in long-term care up until, I got the job in April, and I started my job in neuro rehab in May.
Oh, wow.
So I was eager. I said, well, I can start as soon as you want me to. Just give me a couple weeks to pack my bags and, move to a different province, because it's, it's a 10-hour drive. So I said, give me some time. But
look at me. I came from Brazil, so
you had a little longer travel.
Oh, that's so nice. Nice story. Chelsea, you said the other day, even if you have two people with the same diagnosis, it affects them so differently. They cope differently. And I guess it's so important to say. Sometimes we see like this program is for visual impaired individuals. This program is for individuals who had a stroke. This is for older adults. And I believe we need to think a little bit outside of the box, because an activity for older adults may be effective for individuals who had a stroke, for example. Some music programs used for patients with dementia could be used with individuals with post-traumatic disorder. And I'm pretty sure you agree, and you do that, right? Mm-hmm. So when you came from long-term care facilities to work with the population you do now, have you used some interventions that you used in long-term care facilities?
That's a really good question. I was nodding the whole time you were saying that. I completely agree. I think, it's a good baseline to know, an approach for older adult population, but definitely, I've used, I would say, like sensory stimulation those types of interventions I was normally use with older adults with dementia, more advanced dementia that would lack, more stimulation. We'd have, unfortunately, we wouldn't have a snoozlin room like I would have at a long-term care facility. For those who don't know, a snoozlin room is just a sensory room. So anything that can provide stimulation to all five senses. I don't think there's anything really for taste, because that's not really sanitary, but other than taste, usually there's something for all the senses. So I would say for clients that would have, moderate to severe brain injuries, I've used that intervention a lot, because, they need it to reactivate and to stimulate their brain, and that in itself helps with their brain recovery. And so I would say that would be one of the main interventions I could tie them to. And it boils down as well that any population that would have any kind of disability, unfortunately, have something in common where we would be isolation. So again, I think that any group should require groups to provide social support, to provide socialization, and just that sense of belonging as well. So even providing that with older adults, with my clients, I've noticed they really feed off of that competitiveness. And even music groups where they can share that sense of belonging, even if you have somebody with advanced dementia versus somebody who doesn't necessarily have any cognitive issues, they can relate to a level of music is where they connect, right? Yeah. and I know you're a beautiful artist too that loves music. So I know that's just so important. And I mean, I haven't used necessarily music groups, but just that aspect of having groups to find what people can connect upon has just been so powerful to provide that connection that they normally wouldn't necessarily find on their own.
Mm-hmm. And could you give us some examples of activities that you do with this population? I think students will love that.
Yeah, you mean like in neuro rehab right now? Yeah. So again, it's a very large umbrella. I think that's just been an amazing journey for myself to really listen to what clients need in their rehab. And so again, ideally you'd like to touch on all the domains, but it boils down to what the person wants, right? And so one person, it might be an intervention. We would have weekly groups. COVID changed things a little bit. So before COVID, we would have what we call a breakfast club. And so that would provide an opportunity for somebody that has goals across the team. So if they have functional tasks, such as cooking, they'd work with an OT to prep the food. And then the following morning, we'd get together. Recreation therapists are trained and have the education to properly facilitate groups. And so we would be the facilitators. And one of our SLPs would join to include clients that would have communication goals or trying to work on their swallowing goals as well. And I just loved that because I just love interdisciplinary approach to things. So that would be an example of an intervention I would do for somebody who really either has identified looking for socialization opportunities or who's struggling, with their diagnosis and where they're at. It's a nice opportunity for them to have that social support. And another example and again, like this would be my favorite intervention, but hasn't been since March because of COVID, but would be community and reintegration is huge with this population because for most of the time, it's a new diagnosis they're faced with. So whether it be a brain injury, spinal cord injury, stroke, it's new and it's really challenging to cope with. And so as a recreation therapist, we're able to show that life doesn't stop there. Yes, it's traumatic. Yes, it's a hard road to travel, but being able to assist them to reintegrate into the community and face the barriers they would face with the tools and support they need so that it's not as scary once they get discharged. That's kind of the unfortunate part that I find that COVID has happened. Like we can do so much education, but once you're actually in the community, it's a different, it's totally different. So that's where, definitely outpatient services is that even more important. But yeah, those are kind of some examples, but also some of my favorite interventions that I would do.
Sometimes a client doesn't want recreation therapist services, especially in the population that you work with. And they must be sad, stressed, angry, disappointed with their condition. And seems that RT is not important at all, but it is. We don't have quick solutions, but we can help them to cope with that through leisure in order to decrease stress and etc. And I believe that when they don't want our service, it's exactly when our services is needed, are needed. It happens all the time, and not only with recreation therapy, but all kinds of therapies. What's some strategies that you use when you face a situation like that, when a client just doesn't want your service?
That's another good question because I've struggled with this. And I would say it's just recently that I've been able to make peace with somebody not needing my services. I think, yes, of course, we think what we do is important and they need it. But I've come to understand by, my coworker guiding me through that. Because she's has great insight and experience with this population, but I think it's important to listen to them. I think that what I think is what was so greatly explained to me was that, they're at a place where they don't feel like they have any control over their life, over any decision, right? They just have to relearn a lot of things that they normally wouldn't have to. And it's just overwhelm and just feeling that despair, just like feeling loss of control. And one of the main things that recreation therapy can provide is control, right? Like you have the control over your decisions. Whatever your goals are, okay, let's try to achieve that. Like we're not going to come up with goals for you. You have to tell us, right? And so sometimes just the strategy is to listen, right? Mm-hmm. Is to be like, okay, when I found what has been helpful is, okay, are you okay with me just checking in with you once a week? Mm-hmm. And usually that's accepted. And then I really take time to plan. And it might not seem when I'm in the session that I've planned this and it seems very nonchalant and I'm just chatting away, but I've really put a lot of thought of, okay, how can I just bring up a little bit of education here and just put a little seed, in terms of maybe we underestimate how much we say can stick with somebody. So just a simple conversation that can seem so, not, like I said, like nonchalant and very casual, it can be a great learning moment for them. So I often try, through my assessment, to really learn what's important for that person and bring up the conversation and bring up, oh yeah, I know so-and-so, with success. Like, for example, if I know somebody's a fisherman and, now can only use one arm, I would bring my cell phone with me and be like, I could totally give a little white lie, but I'd be like, oh my God, I saw this post recently, which is really cool. And then I would just show them a picture or a video of somebody fishing with one hand. Be like, isn't that really neat? Like and usually what's pretty cool about being a new grad is you can embrace the fact that you're new to this and being like, I'm learning. So like, I haven't tried this yet. Like, wouldn't that be neat to try it and approach it in a positive way rather than like, what's wrong? What do you need? So I found that just listening and giving them that control is just crucial. And actually I shared a post not that long ago about one of the psychologists on the team I was working with a client. And like I said, it was something that I've been struggling with, to be like, this person doesn't want me, but they're one. But I'm like, but they need me. So I was just like, no.
You need me.
Exactly. Obviously, we would love to think we're very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she just, and that was what my post was based on, like, and what I shared, where she's like, Chelsea, sometimes you just have to be a gardener. Just plant a seed. You don't have to do what we call the whole API process, right? Of have a plan, implement it. Okay, now you evaluate. It's like, no, sometimes it's just through conversation. And I just had the most loveliest, like, can I just share a story too that like recently ties to that a little bit?
Sure.
So yeah, it was a perfect example where it was somebody who had a spinal cord injury for years, never went for rehab, but then kind of sometimes with age, there's more complex, complex symptoms that come, or they often call it like a tune-up, and just to look at new strategies to cope with what comes with age with a spinal cord injury. And so again, it was, this person didn't feel like they needed rec therapy, and I was like, okay, like let's just check in. And then they just saw somebody practice on the guitar, and that was their therapy, their music therapy for themselves. And they were like, yeah, I've always wanted to learn how to play. And so I was like, all right, well, we can explore that. And pain was always an issue. So it was interesting with OT, them trying to help with the seating, how comfortable they can be in their chair. And, we just tried it, and I gave him some resources if ever he wants to follow up. And then I get like this email, because I oftentimes just give my email after, saying, unfortunately, in our province, we don't have community recreation therapists. So oftentimes I give my contact information if ever they have questions. And so I got an email back saying I gave myself an early present, and it was a guitar. And then attached after, he sent me a video of him playing a song. Aww. And so I was, and that was just, I wasn't trying, so, yes, luckily he saw somebody and that triggered something in him that he wanted to try. But it's always nice to have gotten that feedback and then being like, okay, great, you've added value into this person's day-to-day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my next question. I was going to ask you.
Oh, no way.
To ask you, if you had some clients that made you feel really realized in the field. So
oh, that's definitely one of them.
Yeah. And are there some other population you would like to work with in the future?
I think that there's an ALS clinic that often that we have going on. I only work with inpatients, so people that stay at our facility, and so I don't work with clients that are out in the community that only come for like a referral for one session and stuff like that. So I think the ALS population, degenerative condition, would be really interesting to work with, because it's just such a different approach, given that, again, it's degenerative. You don't necessarily work with someone to bring them back to their to how they started, right? It's consistently adapting and thinking ahead on how they can still engage in their meaningful activities, or what makes their life easier and meaningful. And I've loved watching my coworker do that work, because it's definitely a different set of skills, given that it's quick referrals and you're thinking a lot of a couple steps further, and there's a lot more that comes into their interventions. And so that would definitely be a good opportunity that I would like to explore for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations for your position.
Thank you.
CTRA.
Yes.
Yeah, would you like to talk about it? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's similar to, I
another
guess,
butterfly.
yes, 100%. Like this is very recent, like within the last month. And so again, I'm very new to this position, but I fortunately have an awesome person to guide me through it. So Glenn Skimming was the marketing director for 5 years. And so it's nice to have, and now he's the president-elect. So he's staying in the board of directors. And so I'm really excited to just explore this position. And it all came, funny enough, mainly from my page initially, given that, the marketing position is really all about, there's a lot that encompasses this position, but one of the aspects is really creating those connections with either members or partnerships, and just really building those blocks, as well as creating awareness about therapeutic recreation, right? So I'm all about that. Like I'm all about, screaming from the top of my lungs how important therapeutic recreation is, and and creating those meaningful connections, because I've attended 2 CTRA conferences so far, and I've met so many amazing therapists there, and how big the community is growing. And I just think it's so important for us to be seen and acknowledged on a national and international level. And so I'm just really excited for this position to really explore on how can that be attained, and what partnerships can be created, and how can we best support our members, right? So,
right.
Like I said, Glenn, who was the marketing director before, did amazing work on terms of like providing those partnerships and awesome benefits as becoming a member. And I just look forward to hopefully adding on to those benefits, as well as just recreation therapy no longer being a question mark for people, for it to just be common knowledge, and it to be a respected therapy all across practices, really.
Yeah, you do a great job, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Could you explain us about about CTRA? Because there are some people don't know, and
yeah, definitely.
There are a lot of students coming up. Yeah.
It's so CTRA stands for the Canadian Therapeutic Recreation Association. So it is fairly new. 1996 was when it was integrated. So it is fairly new, and really, it's like what we think of rec therapy in general. Really, the goal of it is for recreation therapy to be included in across all practices, and to create that awareness. And there's many chapters incorporated in CTRA. So I know, just like last week, you, the director for TRO.
TRO, yeah.
So for example, that they're their own association, the Therapeutic Recreation Ontario, but others, like here in New Brunswick, we have our own chapter under CTRA, as well as, Alberta, Newfoundland, Quebec is creating their new one. And so most provinces have a chapter under CTRA. And what that provides, again, it's your own mini board of directors within your province. And it's all about advancing the field, right? And continuing following the standards of practice and making sure that we're evolving as as our therapy goes forward. And so it's a really amazing, national association where it assembles every province, because we know everybody practices very differently, and it follows some different standards, but it boils down to the same things, where even if you go on the website, they do boil down the standards of practice for Canadian therapeutic recreation. And so it's kind of a nice way to follow that across provinces. And so, yeah, it's really a nice opportunity to become a member. I find, in terms of, I know as a new grad, even it can be discouraging at times, or overwhelming if you start a new job and you're like, oh my God, I have a lot to catch up on, or what it is. But what's really nice too, personally, I just find the CEUs, to keep your membership, it requires to attend some workshops, which that in return can provide you with CEUs. And so that adds up your number in terms of showing, yes, I'm keeping up with the best practices, and yes, I'm continuing my education. And I think that's so important as recreation therapists, because it's ever changing, right? Mm-hmm. It's people keep coming up with very innovative ways to practice. And I know personally, I'd be less motivated if I didn't have that, what's the word for it? The accountability in terms of making sure I'm doing my continuing education. It provides me that good boost to be okay, yes, I'll continue. And it provides an awesome way of just getting to know other professionals across Canada. And this is just something that I've personally enjoyed by being a member. And, like I said, people can benefit from, I know we have a partnership with Sagamore, where they have the textbooks, and which can be expensive, but they provide some percentages off. And it's just a nice way to be part of the therapeutic recreation community, really. And right. So, yeah, I'm still learning a lot to be part of the board of directors too. And so I'm just super excited to keep learning about even more what we're contributing. And I mean, what I find really neat too is they have the membership directory too. So what's pretty cool as well is, even if somebody, or you might know somebody else in your area, you can look them up on the website. Or if you're looking for rec therapists in your province, if you're new to the province, you can go to the directory and mm-hmm. and try to see and connect with other therapists. So it's a really great tool, again, to create those connections and create that community that we all should get, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And are there some requirements to become a member for students, for example, who just graduated?
Yeah, so there is a student membership, specifically if you're still studying. Again, there's different requirements based on the different memberships you sign up for. So there's, for example, I went for the professional membership, where I'm practicing. You have to be certified, so you have to get your certification done. And I hope I'm not missing anything. So don't quote me, because I'm new to this position.
I know. And do you know about regarding to get the certification, you have to be bachelor, or?
So that
I mean,
goes through, so your certification goes through NCTRC, which the National Council of Therapeutic Recreation. I'm like trying to think of the letters here. But yeah, so there's usually 4 different paths that you can take to get certified. Off the top of my head, I don't know all 4 of them. But for example, there's the common, I would say, like for if you're still a student, the educational, like path A would be where you have to complete a certain amount of additional courses. So whether, like for us at Concordia, it would be, I'm assuming it's the same across universities, but we had to take like an extra abnormal psychology course, and another advanced biology course, and then I forget the name of the other one, but a couple extra courses that you have to take, as well as additional hours to your internship. Mm-hmm. And so where your standard internship might be, I forget the basic 200 some hours, you'd have to do like close to 360 or 500 hours for your internship. So and it just boils down to a couple extra weeks at the end of the mm-hmm. day. So mm-hmm. the way I saw it as a student, I was like, well, it's a couple extra courses. I'm already in school.
Yeah.
And I'm already doing my internship. Why not, stay another couple weeks and then you get to do the exam. But then mm-hmm. I know there's different paths based on if you're done school, you've continued to practice. And then for those details, I'm not too familiar with, but I just took path A which was like the student path, if you will.
But it's not for people who graduated in college, like diploma or certificate, right?
Right. It's a bachelor's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I could stay here forever.
Me too.
We exceeded the limit already. Is there something you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
No, I just think that, if you're in rec therapy, I think you're already probably a great person. So, just don't doubt yourself and know that we have amazing skills to offer, make those feel heard. And as a new board member of the CTRA, though, if anybody does have any feedback or anything they'd like to share, like I'm all ears. So again, if you're curious, reach out or, comment and I can, message you. I just feel like, as this new role, I really want to create those connections with members and being able to, keep moving the CTRA forward and be able to provide what's needed. So I'm all ears and I'm always here to learn. So I think it's a good way of approaching things. I found just embrace being a learner. It's okay not to know everything. Yeah. And there's amazing people out there that can guide you through everything. Right. So
yeah.
I'm here to learn.
You're so great. You're so great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah. So Merry Christmas to all.
Yes.
Please be safe during holidays. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And see you in January.
Yes.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See you.